For more on this story, we now cross live to Andrew Edward Tchie, a research fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Thanks for joining us on the program, Andrew. Now, the road to this signing was a long and arduous one, and one of the biggest obstacles has been a lack of trust between protest leaders and the military. Now, how will this affect the two parties going forward as they prepare to form the new transitional government?
Well, this will impact the transitional government in a massive way, because a lot of the sort of other groups that formed part of the FCC, in this case, we had the Umma Party, you also have the Sudanese professional associations, have also said that actually, in principle, while we celebrate the deal, we don't actually agree with the elements of the deal. And this is because certain elements within the actual agreement itself, in this case, several of the articles do not allow for what's called allows for immunity for many of the people within or who security forces that committed the violence against civilians on June the 3rd. And so what we do see is an agreement in principle where people have signed up and people are celebrating, but actually it's not a peace agreement. So what this does is for the next 3 years, it sets Sudan up to form legislatively bodies, sovereign council, a council of ministers, which would be very technocratic. But what it doesn't do, it doesn't sort of eliminate some of the issues that existed before this issue arose in December of last year.
So we'll have to see if that trust can be worked on or can be restored. Now, a cabinet is expected to be formed later this month. A new prime minister could be named as early as next week. Will this be the first test for the newly signed deal?
This will be the first test, and there will be many hurdles ahead of them, ahead of the council itself, because one, it has to agree on the 11 members who form part of the sovereign council. The 11th member is selected by the FCC, but has to have consensus by the TMC, the Transitional Military Council, as well. You have the Council of Ministers, which again the FCC hasn't nominated or has put forward a name and a name for several other positions as well. Again, that has to be agreed with by the TMC, but also the 300 members that make up the actual, what you would call the parliamentary system, in this case, the sort of lower chambers, also has to be agreed, even though the FCC has 67%, in this case, 2/3 majority, there still has to be an agreement on who is selected. What is different here, I would say, is the fact that even though the agreement in principle has its flaws, it does mark a different or a change of direction for Sudan. But what will be key, I think, that there are sort of several things that are key. One of them is the lack of a comprehensive peace deal, as I said earlier, the structural changes which are important to move things forward for Sudan, a reformist agenda which could, if not done properly, could cause the potential for a security lapse and a potential coup within inside. The FCC, we know, is fragmented and potentially could fragment further, and that will be a concern going forward. But also the security dynamics. How do you incorporate the IISS, which has been widely led by, or has been led by Himiti, who is the second in command of the TMC? How do you reform that group? And how do you cut off the links that it has with Saudi Arabia and other groups as well? But how do you include it as part of the sort of national security dynamic as well? And that will be key going forward for the country.
Thank you, Andrew Edward Tchie, a research fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies.